Hey guys, welcome to Punky's World. Okay, this video is about my favorite cartoons and shows as a kid, but also obscure kids shows. So, I'll tell you what my favorites were, and I'll tell you which ones were obscure, and we'll talk a little bit about them. Transformers, Pac-Man, Q*bert. Yes, those were both TV shows. We'll get there. Inspector Gadget, Gem, Smurfs, Mr. T Show, Plastic Man, which was based off an old comic book. You know what I forgot to write? That's pretty obscure. So I'll put that on the obscure list as well. Sorry. Captain Caveman, Rainbow Bright, Strawberry Shortcake, Pound Bubbies, Ewoks, Facts of Life, Different Strokes, Silver Spoons, Electric Company, Give Me a Break, Family Ties, Davy and Goliath. Oh. Three, two, one, Contact. Okay, now I'll talk about the ones that aren't obscure, then I'll go to the obscure list. Talk about the ones that are. I mean, I've talked about the Smurfs game that I had, and one has to wonder, when you have a whole group of critters, which Smurfs are critters, they're creatures, they're not human. But there's only one older male and only one female. The female's his daughter. He's the dad of the whole community, whether he's actually their dad or they just call him Papa Smurf because he's older. Which begs the question, where are all the mamas? Anyway, things you don't think about when you're a kid. Transformers, More Than Meets the Eye. Captain Caveman was hilarious. That one's more obscure, and I'll talk about that more later. Mr. T had a show, a bunch of teenage gymnasts and him would save the day, so to speak. Rainbow Bright and Strawberry Shortcake both came from some American Greetings. They both came from greeting cards. Pound Puppies were a toy that they turned into a cartoon. The Ewoks were, of course, from Star Wars, and they had like 3 movies of their own. Like Planet of the Ewoks, Return of the Ewoks, and I don't remember what the other one was. And my cousins would record them for me because I wasn't allowed to stay up that late to watch the movies when they came on. Obviously, Facts of Life, Different Strokes, and Silver Spoons, sitcoms, as were Family Ties and Give Me a Break. Those were NBC Friday nights. They had sort of like TGIF, but before TGIF. It was basically a lineup of shows that couldn't be beat by any other channel, and they were on from 8 to 10. They couldn't be beat. Which is why they were all on for over a decade. Well, except for Silver Spoons. That was on for about 3 years. Give Me a Break was on for, I don't know, 6, 7 years. Ouch. Emily Ties was on for over a decade. Different Strokes, Facts of Life were all over a decade. Davy and Goliath, and 3-2-1 Contact, an electric company. I didn't include Sesame Street. I should have included Mr. Rogers, but anyway. Now let's go back and talk about which ones are actually obscure. Okay. Kids Incorporated from 84 to 94 on the Disney Channel, which had people who are big stars today, like Jennifer Love Hewitt, the singer Fergie. That was on the Disney Channel. Back when the Disney Channel was a premium channel. That's another thing. Pay-per-view, streaming, all of that has come in my lifetime. Anyway, the widespread use of cable TV, all in my lifetime. Kids Incorporated was a group of kids who hung out at a local diner, and it had a room in the back where those kids performed music. For some reason, I think there were a couple other kids on there too that made it big later, but yeah, 10 years. And the kids would age out and come in, obviously, during that time. The Snorks, 84 to 89 on Saturday mornings on NBC. And it later moved to the USA Network. So that's 5 years. It's pretty good for a cartoon. I don't know what year it moved to the USA Network, but the USA Network is NBC. NBC owns the USA Network, a couple of the sports networks, a couple of other networks as well. They're all in the same NBC Universal, because Universal owns NBC. That was when NBC and USA first became under the same parent company. Voltron. I consider that one to be obscure because while people my age they remember the toys and all that good stuff, they don't not a lot of people have heard of it. Now, Voltron was a robot, and the way he worked was that there were these, to me they were teenagers, that each had this vehicle, like a flying craft of some sort, and when they wanted to create Voltron, I would say, Voltron Unite, and you would see all of their different colored crafts on the screen, and they would click their crafts together. So 2 of their crafts would become legs, 2 of their crafts would become arms, and the main guy would become the head and body. And they would become Voltron. And there are Voltron toys where you can take each of the components off. I had a Voltron, but you couldn't remove his components. And they would kick the bad guy butts. The Muppet Babies is a little bit obscure because I don't think it was on, maybe it was on longer than I think, but it was the most adorable thing you've ever seen. And the toys from that are worth a fortune now. As are Voltron, and all these other things. Now, Hubert and Pac-Man. Yeah, they were video games, okay, but they also had their own cartoon shows. I still remember an episode of Pac-Man where Pac-Man, Mrs. Pac-Man, Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, and the Pac Kids went bowling, of all things. And you have to remember, when they cartoonized them, they gave them arms and legs. Hubert's cartoon was a little different, but if you're not familiar with the game Hubert, Hubert was hugely popular in the late 70s and early 80s. I think in the early 80s more. And it was a game where the goal was to hop or bounce Hubert on this pyramid, and he had to touch every block on the way up in whatever form you got him up in and make it to the top. Now, it gets more difficult as the levels go on because there are obstacles he has to avoid, like these snakes. If he touches them, he dies. And there are other things that can hurt him too. And if you go back over a step you've already stepped on, you turn the light off. So you have to step on it again to turn the light back on. My mother was really good at it. And if Hubert hit the snake and met his demise, he would swear. Only it would just make sounds. It would put up a thought bubble with a bunch of like @ symbol, number sign, which we call a hashtag today, ampersand, exclamation point, whatever, and it would go frozen, instead of actually swearing. So we just thought that was the funniest thing, that our video game could basically swear, so. Dungeons and Dragons was actually a cartoon, a very innocent cartoon, where this group of kids had basically a dungeon master. There's no other way of putting it. He was their boss, and he would send them places, if I remember correctly, through a train or something, and send them on missions. Speaking of which, I have another one, if I can get my pen. Oops, here it is, that I just remembered. Okay. You can't do that on television. A guy just did a great video on that one. I mentioned Plastic Man. It was my father that told me that was based on an old comic book, and he loved that I liked it so much because of that. So, Captain Caveman was a caveman. The drawing was very primitive, but it was meant to be, and he was not very bright, but that made him funny. 3, 2, 1, contact was a kind of a science show, and it had different segments. One of the segments was the Bloodhound Gang, the Bloodhound Gang. And it was a group of teens and preteens that would solve mysteries. It's pretty cool. There is actually a rock group named after that segment. The Great Space Coaster. I loved that show. One of the segments was the news, and the guy used to sing, "No news is good news." And of course, the electric company is not so obscure. Same idea. It was Sesame Street, but it was for older kids. You know, they dealt more with science and stuff like that. And finally, and I saved this one for last on purpose. Davy and Goliath. Excuse me. It was actually put out by, I want to say, the United Methodist Church, one of the churches. And it was actually quite a successful cartoon. It was on Sunday mornings. And it had been on, let's see if I can get a date on that. Let's see, when was that on from? It was early claymation. 5 seasons, 66 episodes plus 7 specials. 1961 to 2004. Holy macaroni. And my father watched it when he was older because he didn't have TV back then. Oh, United Lutheran Church. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I see. It was off and on. The program had become a fixture on Saturday and/or Sunday mornings on TV stations, both religious and secular, across the country during the 60s and 70s. In the 80s, commercial stations began gradually dropping the series. Religious stations picked it up in many markets. Okay, so regular TV stopped airing it, basically. But I used to watch it. Davy and Goliath were actually Davy and his dog, Goliath. The same gentleman who did the claymation for Gumby did the claymation for Davy and Goliath. It's kind of sad to me that regular TV stations just stopped. They wouldn't air it anymore because it was religious. But I grew up with it, and it was something that my dad had watched and introduced me to, and we actually watched it on Sunday mornings. It was sort of, looking back on it, my dad taking me to church. It would be before Mom got up because it was on pretty early, and him and I would get up, we would have breakfast, watch Davy and Goliath, and that was Daddy taking me to church, you know, looking back on it. And I'm so glad I had that. And so yeah, you know, it didn't even occur to me till just now that that's exactly what it was. My father had a hard time verbalizing things and sharing, you know, with me how he felt about me, or with me about his faith, and that was his way of doing so, you know. And of course we shared Plastic Man. My dad was a big kid. He liked cartoons. He wasn't the only one though, because Mr. Abnowski used to watch the old cartoons when he would go on business trips to Maine, and there was very little on TV in the hotel room. He could get old cartoons late at night, like way back from his day. And one of them was Frick and Frack, and that's what he used to call Doug and I. So, I'm like, who the heck is that? He's like, ask your dad. Because my dad is only 2 years older than Mr. U, which means Mr. U is going to be, wow, 79 this year. Mrs. U is going to be 77. Wow. So, God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for listening to me. I'll try to find some pictures to put in. Specifically Davy and Goliath. I'll try to find some pictures and put them in at the end of the video. So, God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Please subscribe to all of my channels and check out the videos on the other 2 channels today. Bye, guys.